order, please. Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, June 5th, please. Make a motion to approve the minutes. I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Done. Old business. New business. Development plan review pre-application meeting. Proposed building addition, Hopkinton First Seventh-day Baptist Church, 8A Church Street, AP 24, lot 94. Applicant or representative present.
Yes, sir.
Come forward.
All right. I'm Dave Stahl.
Thank you.
I am the pastor of the First Hopkinton Seventh-day Baptist Church and also live at 173 Main Street in Nashville.
Okay. So you're here for a pre-application for a proposed building addition. Looks like you've already been to the zoning board.
Correct. And we had a zoning hearing with public comments, etc., about 5 or 6 weeks ago.
This is a pre-application for a development plan review. Anything else you care to share with us, other than what we've received in our packet?
I don't think so. I'll be happy to answer questions or clarify things if that's helpful.
Okay, very good.
If I can interject, my name is Marco Tomasini. I'm the architect who prepared the plans, and if the board wishes to, I would go over the plans that were distributed so that you can become more familiar with the project.
I have a question. There was a question about the septic system. I'll find the documentation on that.
Correct.
I just got this package late last night. I haven't really gone over it. It may be in here. I apologize if it is. But
Yeah, so the septic system, we have no record of the septic system. The town has no record of the septic system, pre-78 or post-78. The state has no record of the septic system pre-90 or post-90 in either of their databases. So a very helpful lady at the state DEM office said to me, then Pastor Stahl, you don't have a septic system. So she said, in terms of doing a suitability study, she said, if we don't have record of it, you don't have one. I said, you understand that it's here and we're looking at it? She said, yes, I understand that, but you don't have a septic system. So in other words, they won't even do a suitability test on undocumented system. So no matter what we do, we're going to be starting from scratch with a septic system. So we expected anyway, after we did the suitability study, the engineers have told me nobody knows the system is deemed suitable. They'll make you update anyway. So we expected to have to put in an entirely new system, and she's confirming for us that that's what we're going to have to do. So I wish we had a way out of that, but the system predates my tenure. I've been here just about 10 years, and it predates me. And someone was helpful to the church probably and put a system in at some point in time, and it's functioning well. We know roughly what kind of system it is, but the fact that there's no documentation means we're starting over as far as the state goes.
And that was a condition of the zoning board permit, if I'm not
To do the suitability study,
And
but
to-
of course we can't do the suitability study, so when or if we get to the point of a building permit and a building process, obviously that's going to be a central piece.
Planning board members, any other questions, comments?
I'd like to discuss parking. So in the zoning board notes, there's a listing of the structures and the total amounts. And so if I'm correct, the original church is 5,300 square feet. The additional building that you already used on the side,
The parish house.
yeah, is 2,800 square feet. And then this new addition is 3,400.
33,004 square feet.
Okay,
3,304.
okay.
No, 3,004.
3,004.
3,004?
Yeah.
Okay. So in doing all of, and then I read what the zoning board did is they added up the total square footage to come to a number of how many parking spots. So that was one way, and I went back and looked into the zoning regs. And so the other way, for in a building that is assembly, where you have people come, you look at number of people, right? There's two ways, whether or not, commercially, we've always looked at it in square footage, but it's also how many people. So I wanted to,
Sure.
so I was thinking, how would one come up with a number for that? Because I consider a church to be assembly, as opposed to an industrial place in square footage. And so so they said in section 28 of our zoning law, it's one parking spot for every 3 seats. So I was thinking, how would one figure out that? And talk a little bit about the parking. Would we use like the maximum occupancy of these 3 structures and add those together and get a number for the worst case scenario of how many spots one would need? You know, I don't know what would be a reasonable number. So I just wanted to talk in general about the view of parking.
Will you have it?
Some of our conversation with the zoning board was, the idea of the new building is a foyer and a gathering space for the existing church community. In other words, the 2 spaces wouldn't be used simultaneously by separate groups. It's all attached. It's an addition on the building.
Well, they're not
So-
attached though. I mean, there's some separation between these 2.
There's separation with a firewall, but the space is attached. It's really the link space. You'll notice a ramp that goes up on the floor plan diagram into the sanctuary space, and then a ramp on the other side of the building goes down into the basement space.
Okay.
So it's really meant to be a connector to spaces. It's a place where people will come in and go out with extra bathrooms and coffee and refreshments and that sort of thing. So it's sort of a foyer or narthex gathering space for the church. So part of our it's not a building that's going to have seating necessarily. So I don't know how you would figure that either. So we use the seating number in the sanctuary because the idea of this building is it's a place that people are coming through to go in or out of the sanctuary. So we aren't adding additional numbers of people to be in the building at the same time. It's just a place that they would gather or go in and out to go into the sanctuary. So we use the seating number in the sanctuary. And do you have that number?
I think it was 200 at a maximum of the holiday that I read somewhere.
Can
Oh, sure,
I
sure.
remind if I
Come on in, Marco.
To answer your original question, we're familiar with both ways of determining the seating capacity. One being relatively relaxed, which is the one in the zoning ordinance, one space per 250 square feet for non-residential functions or uses. That would yield approximately 40 parking spaces, which we would have in excess. So, however, in talking with the building inspector in preparation of the zoning hearing, we also agreed to look into the occupancy by building code, which is what you're referring to, and therefore, in establishing the number of parking spaces based on that calculation, that is, as an assembly building, one parking space every 3 occupants, or 1 car every 3 occupants. In order to do that, we determined, as the pastor mentioned, the preface to this is that the addition that we are building will not add occupants to the total load because there will be no concurrent functions in the addition and in the church. Therefore, the ruling factor is the occupancy of the church. So we proceeded to calculate not the square footage, but the number in the building code requires that you calculate the occupancy of a building by number of seats where there are fixed seats or pews or bleachers. calculation is made at 18 inches per length of pew or bench. That is one person. So that's how we proceeded to calculate the occupancy of the church. Now that occupancy is huge, and there has not been any reported event that has held that many occupants.
What was the number?
Can I get that?
Yes,
Can I get this to you?
I just
I don't know
wanted
if you
to,
have
Oh, I
this.
have it. Was that the 200 number?
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was your 18 inches?
I don't remember exactly. We prepared this for the zoning board, and so I can go over this with you more in detail, but I just wanted to explain to you the
Yeah.
process.
We have any color.
And so,
I didn't.
I thought that 200 number was an estimate based upon having a service and wasn't, I didn't get the impression from that it was a calculated number.
It
well,
was measured 18 inches on the pew.
the total is of 405 people.
Oh, 405.
Okay?
There's a balcony gallery that wraps around upstairs, so that's including the balcony space.
However, if we go by statistic, the use of the church, church function, so that is calculated by building code at 18 inches per length of pew. And the first floor is 250 people, and the balcony is 55 people, for a total of 405. Statistically and historically, typical church functions like mass and are between 90 and 110 people. This number is exceeded on occasions such as weddings and holiday functions up to a maximum of 200 people. Never the capacity calculated by code. There were considerations about the new addition and the statement that this addition is a transitional space to provide access to the church, provide handicap accessible toilets, and to provide also space for gathering and functions, but never concurrent with the events that would be held in the church. Therefore, not adding to the total number of people. And therefore, we determined these are the facts that we are quoting to you. Okay? The parking calculations that we did after that was based on the area that is paved, which we counted at 58 in this statement for the zoning board. We had calculated 58 spaces. We were short of 3. There are 61 spaces to be exact. That would allow for 58 spaces would allow for 174 occupants, calculated at 3 people per car. But cars can also be parked in the lawn, and there is approximately, and the lawn is mainly lawn, there are a few trees on the grass, basically. There are, in case of overflow, approximately the calculations, let's say, typical calculations for parking lots in a not really concentrated fashion is, if I recall correctly, 100 cars per acre. And that is the planning factor that is used for parking islands, and some vegetation, this type of stuff. Otherwise, it is actually, it allows for more parking if you were calculating in a parking lot for, like, for example, Walmart or a parking garage. And therefore, if we calculate 100 cars per acre, we could fit another 100 cars because there is approximately 1 acre that is available of lawn, even thinking of going around the trees. Therefore, if we were able to park another 100 vehicles on the property, that would bring the total of occupants load to 444 people. Therefore, meeting the occupancy, the maximum occupancy of the church, even if we had to go to that extent, actually exceeding that.
But your occupancy didn't include your existing community hall, right? So that was just this part here. But you've got 3 structures. You have your existing community hall, you have your addition, and your church, right?
That's correct.
So that was just, so, okay.
And typically, again, when there are functions in the church, there are not functions in the other buildings, so we're calculating the building that would hold the most occupants.
You know, I am in favor of supporting your church. You know, I think it's a good thing for community. I guess I just still, I found some of this to be a little loose. I think that the fact that there weren't parking spots listed, so I'm not quite sure, is this paved over here, or is this?
Paved, the gray, the light gray area is paved parking
Okay.
and driveway. It's a double loaded parking bay.
And I would add from our perspective, if one part of the discussion we had with zoning was if we needed to add additional parking. Is there space to do that? Is there practice to do that? So the zoning has a ratio of the amount of ground that can be paved versus, a percentage of the total lot size. And we were well within the percentages to add parking if that's needed. From our perspective, we want to have as much of the parking as close to the entrances as possible. So to add additional parking behind the new addition is something that we're very open to. My desire to do anyway, and certainly if the planning board feels that more parking is needed or necessary, there's plenty of space for us to add parking.
I don't know if I'm in favor of oceans of asphalt. I've had this discussion before with a former planning board member who was our engineer, Ms. Doyle, and she told me that the asphalt's considered more favorably than a rock driveway. I think it's something to do with permeation. We had this discussion years and years ago. So, but I guess I was thinking whether or not because to be honest, it's not the Washington County Fair. If people are going to come and it's full, they're not going to park on the grass, right? They're going to park on the street. Just in my perspective, if I went to the church and all the places were filled, I'm not sure I would park on the grass.
Depends if the church enforces that.
Yeah. Again, we don't have events that exceed our paved parking lot on a regular basis.
Right.
The parking there's parking spaces, does your diagram show actual spaces?
No,
Okay.
it didn't, and that was my other concern. Maybe I didn't get to all of the same, but I just had the grade.
Okay.
So I think the spaces, so part of what I would suggest is I would like the document that has the spaces, because another thing that I'd like to see is the handicapable spots listed and exactly, just to make sure how many spots you need and what number do you use? What your,
Of the handicap spot?
yeah, what number of occupancy do you use? Area, do you use 405 people? Because the number of,
So the reason I asked about
Let me just the number of handicap I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's one every 25 parking spaces, yes.
And as a church congregation, we have a lot of older folks.
Right.
So we have considerably above that number, just because we want to make sure those spots are marked so that people don't have to walk too far.
Right.
The reason I was asking about the spaces, there's a row of spaces that are perpendicular to Church Street. Basically, all the way along the frontage of that parking lot is a row of spaces that are perpendicular to Church Street. When we did that parking lot, we set them back from Church Street 6 or 7 feet. Enough space so that cars could park down the side of Church Street, but off the street when we have larger events. So they do that. Those are not marked spaces, but that's another roughly 15 cars. When we have had larger events, I will tell you in the last 9 years that we've had larger events where we direct people to park on the lawn. And they do. And so usually what we would do, the larger events are mainly our cantata events where we have orchestra members and choir members coming, and sometimes that's 50 or 60 cars. So they would fill our parking lot before the guests come. So we'll direct those people or even park their cars for them and pull them into the grass and park them on the grass. So it's a flat lot with good, rugged old grass.
Yeah, it always looks good to me when I'm driving that.
So we do park cars on the lawn. You know, you're right that it wouldn't be generally human nature. You wouldn't
Right.
pull up and say, I'm just going to drive off the pavement and go park in the middle of the grass.
Right, right.
But we direct people to do that when we do have a larger event.
Okay.
So
So how about this as an idea, because I think you might be onto something. So how about a plan at some point in the process that shows a parking scheme for your full capacity? So if you have to use your lawn area to get your parking spaces, show us a plan that does that. So that we can at least say, we've done our due diligence. Yes, there is a parking plan. It should be feasible, of course. We don't want to see parking spaces in the wetland. So show us a parking plan so that it can become part of the plan set. How's that?
that makes sense.
I think so, except one more thing I'd like you to add, that I want the police and fire just to take a look at it, to say it's full. Because that was also in the zoning, just to make sure that we have it on record, that a letter from them saying that they've seen your parking plan and they think it's okay and it meets their needs, just to be clear, so.
Hopkinton, police and
Hopkinton,
fire,
yep.
just to sign off on the
Yep, on your parking
on the
plan,
parking plan.
but it's at full tilt, so to speak, just to make sure that they think that we did our due diligence.
Right.
so.
And that we haven't blocked something that
Right, exactly,
may
right,
have created some sort of danger.
right, right.
And when you say full tilt, are you talking about the 400?
No, I'm talking about their maximum of 2, I would imagine. They're 400, I mean, they're never gonna get to 400.
No, I want to see the full boat.
You wanna see 400?
Because the current parking spaces basically meet capacity if we go to the, to the three occupants per car.
Okay,
Yes,
let's do
yes,
400.
but according to the building code, if I'm reiterating this correctly, it would be a much larger number.
Yes. it would
So
be
that's
one.
the number that I think we want to see. It would be the first to acknowledge that you may never use it from what you're representing. Your events don't get to that point. That's great. I'm pleased to hear that. But we wouldn't want somebody to come in and say, look, they're having events. This is 5 years from now. Suddenly your parish has grown. God bless you. But we somehow didn't foresee all this necessary parking. I don't want to be there.
Sure.
Good. Anything else? I'll get to it. Jim, anything?
I just like to reinforce what Amy brought up there is that I think from a fire standpoint, they're going to want to see access around the building if they have to get there in an emergency. So make sure that those parking spaces don't conflict with their ability to get in there quickly if they have to.
Sure.
Well, it will be reviewed with the fire department as well.
We just did some repairs, some groundwork. We cleared some brush and took some trees down, and there was a bit of a ledge off the blacktop on one side. And it was a little too much for some of the cars when we wanted to park people in So we just had to bring that grade up and smooth that out to make sure that it was all very usable and accessible. And that goes into a large fenced, probably 2-acre yard. It's an excellent place to park the extra cars.
What is the footprint of the property? I've just asked it.
It's a great question. I don't remember that
I
exact
think
number.
it's about 3 acres.
I was gonna say 3.5 acres. And almost all of that is cleared and flat. There's trees down the north side of the property separating us from the houses on the hillside.
I got 66 years of residence.
I'd just like to make an observation. After looking at your plans, I mean, I love it. I love your church. It's a beautiful building. And I sort of juxtaposed against the addition. And although the addition is, I'm full with your work, but I just wonder if it could be melded together with the church a little bit better. I mean, we do have design guidelines, subdivision regulations that have been for various areas of town. And I just like to see something that is fitting for the church itself. That design didn't do it for me personally, but anyway, just my observation. It looked a little like modernistic, a typical ranch house, if you will.
Oh, you think some more molding like they have on this here, see on the side? I like how you did the window,
Yeah.
so it was matched, just so that it would appear more
Yeah.
like this.
In the statement that we provided with the application, there is a reference to that, and indeed, the intent is that there was an initial sketch for this purpose. There is not, besides the layout, calculation of square footage and so on, there has not been a lot of time devoted to the design, the actual architectural design. However, the intent is to provide a building that is subservient to the church in size, or at least diminish the size of the building, which is actually quite long. And in fact, we're doing that by dropping down a certain portion of the building, the front portion, as if it were a lower porch approach to the building. And then maintaining the rest of the building, the hall, and all the ramping portion at a higher height. And that is determined by the rise that we have to reach to the level of the church, and therefore we have to have a headroom about that, and spacious. But also on the steep exterior of the building, we will follow certain elements, and we propose certain elements like the corner boards and the frieze at the cornice at the top. Also a canopy similar to the one of the church, not the same. It doesn't want to compete with it. It wants to recall it, and that will soften, this separation between the two buildings, so to speak. However, we want to keep it separate. We don't want to make it feel that it wants, it's an addition, it's a bump into the church.
And some folks in the church had that same observation. We had to remind them that this is a sketch to give you the dimensions and the idea. Certainly those wide corner moldings, those things that the professional architects know all the details. Some of us just know the things we can easily see with our plain eyes. And so folks looked at that diagram and said, I thought we were going to have those wide corner moldings and kind of match the church and all that. And Marco and I assured them, we will. This sketch was to give the overall feel and the overall dimension.
The massing
overall
and
look.
the bottom.
So the church is particular about that too.
You don't need a sidewalk on the outside there? There's no sidewalk,
I'm sorry.
you don't need a sidewalk,
The
like adjacent to the building, or you just assumed everyone's gonna go inside, so it just is flush to the asphalt on your drawing?
Well, again,
Okay.
the rendering does not depict all the project elements, so there is going to be a concrete sidewalk. It's going to be a slight rise to get to the building, not a ramp, and to connect to the existing grade in the parking lot.
So I know we have someone in the audience who wishes to be heard. If there is anyone, this would be the time. Yes, ma'am. Step right up. Yes, please. Introduce yourself and your name, please.
My name is Lois Gardner. I live at 19 Church Street, Ashaway. And I raised my hand when you talked about parking because I don't know how many events there have been, but there have been events at the church where cars have parked all the way down Church Street on both sides. And so as a resident, we have been concerned about when a fire truck come down when we've got cars parked on both sides of the road. I'm not sure where the green parking is. Is it behind the community center building?
The new area that I
The
just
area
spoke
that you
of,
say people park on the grass.
yes, just to the new area that I spoke of is on the west side of the parish house, the newly fenced area.
So that's where it is, behind the fence?
Yes, inside the fenced area, but we also park cars behind the parking lot and around the church building.
Okay. And I didn't know if there are wetlands at all on the property. And that kind of goes to your question about a lot of asphalt. So I'm not familiar. I thought there was a small pond back there, but I'm not sure.
The plans do not represent that, although the zoning board, please correct me if I'm mistaken, aside from making a condition about the sewage disposal, they also, one of the other conditions was stormwater mitigation. So in order to
And we
do
have a
that,
lot of runoff on that road.
so in order to do that, the applicant is going to have to develop a different type of plan. You know, to the extent that there are wetlands on the site or off the site, those would probably be depicted.
Because there's a lot of high groundwater. I mean, many of us on Church Street, we all have ponds on our property. So there is a high water table, very high water table. I do appreciate when you brought up the aesthetics of the building. So I'm going to go there because I missed the meeting in May. I was out of state. And I had gone a couple of weeks back to the zoning board about the signage out in front of the church. And I said the church put up a beautiful sign that's similar to other signs around the town. And then they put up a sign that is lit up at night. And I feel like it's so out of context for our community. So I went to the zoning board and I asked, how do we get a sign like that that's lit up at night when the only other sign in town that gets lit up is the gas station and the plaza up the road? And the zoning person said, well, I didn't know there were two signs there. We only had an application for one sign. And they said, well, do you think the lights can be shut off at night? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'm guessing if it's electrically supported with light at night, maybe it could be shut off at night. But I personally find it very offensive. And I'm a churchgoer, and I'm all for, doing things for your parish, but I don't know how that sign got up. And it's totally out of our community.
Dark sky compliant.
So you're really talking to the wrong board, right?
I know, that's why I went to the zoning board, and they said they would get back to me, and they never got back to me, and I've talked to other people, and they said they filed the same complaint about the second sign.
Well, I don't think I'm out of order, and I don't think the Lord would mind. Get down there and file another complaint. I'm serious.
Okay.
I don't know how else things get done. So somebody put up a sign,
Yeah.
perhaps it was, I'm sure it wasn't, someone looking to intentionally violate
No,
our
it's just
ordinances,
out
but
of context. You already have a beautiful, beautiful sign,
Yeah.
and then you put something up that's lit up at night, and it's totally out of character, I think, for the community.
I understand, listen, if a sign is not permitted, doesn't matter whether it's a church or a commercial establishment, doesn't belong there. That would be my opinion.
I'll go back.
There's the answer.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
All right.
Anyone else in the audience this evening?
I just wanted a clarification about the existing community hall. Is that still going to be there?
Yes,
So okay. I was just wondering.
yep, it will not be changed. And I just wanted to say for the record that the sign was permitted. Permit was done, inspection was done after, and there are two signs that are both lighted, and both replaced lighted signs that were there before.
Having a light on the ground, looking up at a sign is totally different than like a billboard sign that's lit up at night. totally different.
So all that matters is that when you go to the building or the zoning office, there should be a detail of what was permitted. If the lights are there.
Well, they're the ones who told me there was no permit for this. I didn't make that.
Sounds like someone needs to dig deeper.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyone else? We're good? Anything else, planning board? So we have a decision to make from this point. Looks like there are several options before us. I defer to you whether you would like to waive further review, have them come back under the development plan review ordinance, or whether you would like to boost this up to something more dramatic. I defer to you as to how you vote.
Well, I do believe you need to come back, because we'd like to see more of the plans regarding the parking and more of it fleshed out exactly how it's going to be. So my view is that it's either a developmental plan review or it's going to follow as a major land development. And when I thought about this the last couple of days, I was really struck with the parking. And that's where, because the major land development really speaks to if it's going to impact other parts of the community. And so that's what I was struggling with, is with the parking and the impact further on Church Street. But, so I could go either way of whether or not it's developmental plan review or major land. I kind of think major land might be overkill,
I tend to agree.
so,
This isn't like that.
right.
But I concur with you that I would like to see it as it evolves. You have a little bit more work to do. So I don't see the harm in having them return to the planning board, but under the development plan review ordinance.
Yes.
Because I think we can handle all of your concerns under that umbrella.
Right. Because what I would like to see when you come back to the planning board is a detailed parking scheme of how you are going to meet the zoning for the occupancy at full tilt and the letter. And I want to see that. And I would also addressing some of the concerns about if there is parking along the road, the impact of the fire, just some sort of discussion with police and fire and what their view is of the situation. Just in case we need to do more, in case they're like, no, we do have this current issue, and do we need to consider other parking?
Well, my interpretation, please correct me if I'm mistaken. I'm sorry, is there something?
I say allow parking on one side of the street, but not both of us.
No, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm mistaken, that the zoning board was quite clear. There will be no parking on the street. You're going to direct your parishioners to get off the street. Is that correct?
No, the zoning board was asking us to make sure that they didn't park on the street outside of our frontage.
Well, that's what I mean by the street. So on Church Street.
So they meant,
In the town right-of-way.
they said on the street in front of the church property. They asked us to make sure that there was no parking on the street beyond our property.
That's what I'm referring to. The street is the town right-of-way.
And Ron Spizzato, in the zoning board, we had some discussion about was there room for fire trucks and fire vehicles, and was he comfortable, or had he seen any parking on the street that would be a hindrance or a safety issue? And he said no, he was comfortable and confident with the safety.
On both sides, though. I mean, so,
Right, that was the discussion, is parking on both sides. When we've had events, did he think there was still room? And that was just his opinion, he said yes. But I had just one clarifying question when we do the parking diagram, and this is related to the discussion we're having right now, is where we have those spaces, and obviously the parking diagram will show you the spaces and where they are, where the spaces are set back from the street to allow for cars to park parallel to the street in front of our road. Can we include that in the parking, in the diagram that we bring to you, or would you rather that that was not included?
Listen, if it's on your property, you get to park there.
Okay.
But don't come here with a parking plan that shows parking on the town right-of-way. That won't fly.
Okay,
We good?
so, yes.
Because we wouldn't allow that for any other applicant. You've got to handle the parking on your property.
I think he means they're going to be adjacent on the road, though, in Church Street.
As long as they're on their
They're
side.
parallel to the street, but they're off the street.
Oh, they're off
Like
the
we
street,
park
okay.
out there
There
parallel.
was not a
parking off the street.
delineation yet in that plan of where maybe the
The road
property
is.
line exactly is and the public right of way.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's,
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
How do you deal with the overflow or the extra vehicles when there's inclement weather? And this winter would be an example of it because I don't think you're gonna be plowing grass, right? Right. So do you have instances where that's an issue? Because that's gonna kill the parking plan.
We haven't had that issue. So it certainly creates an issue for creating a parking plan with all the cars on the grass if there's snow on the grass, and that becomes unmanageable.
I'm just talking
that's
about
a
plow
different-
that's gonna
That's a different
put
challenge.
everything
'cause-
right up to the grass line,
Right.
and then you don't have access to it, you know?
Right.
And yeah, sure, I wouldn't want to pull my vehicle onto grass where snow is melting and you might sink in and just keep AAA over there.
We used to have that. We didn't have as large a paved parking area 10 years ago. We used to pull cars out on a somewhat regular basis. A lot of the parking was on the grass, and so we've improved that by putting sufficient paved parking for our general events. But in the diagram that you're asking for, where we would park those additional 100 cars on the lawn, I don't have an answer for you in terms of an inclement weather plan. I mean, yeah, I guess the same would be said for parking
Cancel
lots.
the events.
Well, there might be a couple of options there. Yes, you can cancel the event, or I might suggest that because this is a little bit theoretical, right? Since you're representing to us that you never exceed capacity, hey, perhaps you have some agreement with, I don't know, the school property, that in unusual circumstances, you're allowed to park there. I don't know, just throwing an idea out.
Sure. And we
Put
have
that,
done
put that in your application, that you've worked some kind of arrangement out with some other group.
We have done that with the post office parking lot, the Ashway Elementary School parking lot, and the Our Lady of Victory Church parking lot.
That covers it then.
When we do special cantatas, and we have had people shuttle back and forth from those lots when we have bigger events. So we have used all three of those
Oh, that'd be great.
with permission and with agreement, so.
That does it.
Our biggest event of the year is the Ashway Holiday Stroll. It's the second week in December every year, and people are all over the town. People are parked all over the town. We do a Christmas cantata that is our biggest event every year, by far. It's twice as many people as we ever have for the rest of the year. So that's our time when things get tight, and that's a time when we use Our Lady of Victory, the elementary school, and the post office. And we shuttle people back and forth. We've even done valet, so, we've done both.
Okay, great. So this is a pre-application, other than our decision to, does that have to be a motion? Other than a motion to select option B, there's no formal approval of your pre-application, so you're all set. What's the motion?
I'd like to make a motion that this application follows under the developmental plan review ordinance.
Motion second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to
Appreciate
your
your
next
time,
event.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, solicitors report. Planners report. Correspondence and updates. Public comment.
Can't resist
Well,
this.
you know,
It's too early. You don't mind, do you?
We just call them complete.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Now it's on its own. It's not town council
We
meeting.
don't necessarily do that.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. Good evening and thanks for what you do for our town and its residents. The residents are really the town, and I wish some members of the town council will listen to the residents and listen to our planning board. It was nice to follow a group like this with a church where it's the residents of our town. Myself and many others have attended countless town council meetings, hearing planning board meetings during the past year. I've always felt that the residents should do their own research and provide facts to the town council and the planning board. In my opinion, you just can't say, well, I don't like it, or I I just don't know why, I just don't like it. I think residents should do the research for these particular projects. I wish I would have done some research of the DEM files, the Secretary of State's website, and Google the names of landowners from some recent projects that have taken place in town. This research would have provided the planning board and the town council with additional information. It may have changed the votes on the way some people had voted on particular projects. I realize that the planning board and town council do a lot of work as it is, and if I was a member of the planning board or the town council, what I would do is, again, it's my own opinion, I would do my own research. I would go to the DEM files on a particular project. I would have as much information as possible before I voted. There isn't anything wrong, in my opinion, as having as much factual information as you can get before you make a decision. On some particular projects that have happened, it'd be a little bit late, but on one particular project that most of us were involved in on Old Depot Road, we did that. We did our research, provided it to the town council. Myself and Eric Bibler did a lot of research recently, and it was kind of nice because I came up with some things from DEM, he came up with some of the same information. I wanted to thank Jim and Sean for providing a memo that's in your planning board packet this week to show the results of that research. It's not a binder. You know, when I mention Eric's name, sometimes I'm a little hesitant because you can visualize a binder this big. It's 5 pages. It's a 5-page memo that's dated June 25th, 2019. You probably haven't had time to read it yet, but if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call and we can explain some of the issues that are on that memo. There are some serious issues on this particular memo, as you will see. Like any other project, there are some good developers. For an example, Oak Square. I've heard their name, I've been to their hearings, and they're one of the, in my opinion, one of the good guys when you look at some of these developers. There are some other developers that have some serious issues. And I believe the same goes for landowners. There are some good landowners out there that play by the rules. And then there are many who think they can do whatever they want because it's their land. That really is false. You just can't do anything you want on your own property. And when you look at this memo, you'll see an example of some of the things that have been done in particular projects. Again, thanks for all you do. Thank you for the time to allow me as a resident of Hopkinton to speak. It was kind of disturbing to me recently. I have a protest against the town council, and I didn't go to the last hearing for particular reasons. I can waste my time other places. It was disturbing when I looked at the video and we had a resident from our town that during public forum, and this planning board is the exact opposite. You get the time within reason, you can stand up, no one is chatting between each other and talking and not paying attention to what our limited time is. But at this meeting on Monday, I would encourage you to look at the video, and it starts around minute 42. One person got up to speak, and she started her comments, and she was told by the town council president that we can just read this in the paper, and really try to shut her down. I want to thank Sharon Davis and Sylvia. They both said, let her speak, and that's the point. As a resident, if we can't stand up here and explain to you what our concerns are, just like this young lady has some concerns, the residents need to be able to speak. And I appreciate that with the planning board. I don't want to take any more time. If you have any questions in that memo, feel free to give me a call or email. But you'll find some very interesting information in there. And I think if we can look at any project, and do some additional research, that maybe we can eliminate some of these projects before they get to the point where they are now. But thanks again, I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, anyone else?
His birthday, 66 years old, June 30th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Just a
Scott Biller, Vice President of the Town Council. I am very active in the Masonic organization. In fact, I'm going to be headed this fall September, and they meet on the first Wednesday, so you never see me. It's probably a blessing and a curse maybe at the same time. But I want to say that one of the things I have done since I returned to the council in November is try to afford some respect to the planning board. You know, I say the planning board is like Rodney Dangerfield, they get no respect. And I think that you don't have to agree with boards and commissions or if you're on the town council, but I think that you should take their opinion quite seriously, especially when it's unanimous. And particularly when you're dealing with controversial issues. The town of Hopkinton right now, and I've lived here 66 years, I've only lived in 2 houses in my life, and in my ancestors, one of my ancestors was the first town clerk of this town in 1757, that's quite a while ago. But I will say this, that on controversial issues, it's best, if possible, to have the most united front we can have, despite our disagreements. And I don't see this on like development issues, particularly on solar, which concerns me. And I said one thing that I think is really important, probably the most important thing I've said, is the planning board and the town council use the same comprehensive plan. And I think that's very important to remember, for the council to remember and the planning board. But I thank you for your service. I'm sure it's frustrating. The council doesn't follow your advice a lot, and I'm sure at times I will disagree with you. This council term is very new. It's just passed a quarter over, so, but I'm delighted that I was able to, July and August, I don't have a conflict, so I thought I'd be here, and out of respect to you, I took my free first Wednesday night off to be here, and I thank you for your service to the town of Hopkinton. Thank you.
Scott, thank you very much, and we do appreciate your support. Thank you. Okay, anyone else this evening? All right, let's do it. Next regular meeting, August 7th. Everybody okay with that? Anything else that needs to come before us that can legitimately do that? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Go forth,